The ordinary Thursday. Marcus Thompson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he loaded another stack of pizza boxes into his beat-up Honda Civic. The summer heat was brutal, and the ancient air conditioning in his car had given up working months ago. At 23 years old, Marcus had been delivering pizzas for Tony's Pizza Palace for almost 2 years now, saving every penny he could for his dream of opening his own auto repair shop. The evening rush was just beginning, and Marcus knew he had a long night ahead of him. His manager, Tony Ricci, had already handed him a list of 12 deliveries scattered across the wealthy Hillcrest neighborhood. These were the orders that could make or break his night. Rich folks who either tipped generously or not at all. "Take care of the Blackwood mansion first," Tony called out from behind the counter. Mr. Blackwood called personally, wants 2 large pepperonis delivered by 7 sharp. He's having some kind of business meeting. Marcus nodded, checking his GPS. The Blackwood estate was about 15 minutes away, nestled in the most exclusive part of town where houses sat on acres of manicured lawns and driveways, curved like small roads. He had delivered there once before about 6 months ago, and remembered being impressed by the sheer size of the place. Robert Blackwood was the CEO of Blackwood Industries, a manufacturing company that employed half the town. Everyone knew his name, even if they had never met him. The local newspaper often featured stories about his business deals and charitable donations. Marcus had heard that Blackwood was a tough businessman but fair to his employees. As Marcus drove through the winding roads of Hillcrest, he couldn't help but admire the massive houses behind their iron gates and stone walls. Each property seemed to compete with the next in terms of grandeur. Swimming pools sparkled in backyards, and expensive cars sat in circular driveways like trophies on display. The Blackwood mansion came into view as Marcus turned onto Maple Ridge Drive. The house was a sprawling colonial-style building with white columns and perfectly trimmed hedges. A fountain bubbled in the center of the circular driveway, and expensive cars were parked near the main entrance. A black Mercedes, a silver BMW, and a red Ferrari that probably cost more than Marcus would make in 5 years. Marcus parked his modest Honda next to the Ferrari, feeling slightly embarrassed by the contrast. He grabbed the 2 pizza boxes from his passenger seat and walked toward the front door, his sneakers crunching on the gravel driveway. The massive wooden door had an ornate brass knocker, but Marcus opted for the doorbell instead. The door opened almost immediately, revealing a man in his late 40s with graying hair and worried eyes. This was Robert Blackwood himself, though. He looked quite different from the confident businessman Marcus had seen in newspaper photos. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, his tie loosened, and his shirt wrinkled. "The pizza," Blackwood said, his voice strained. "How much?" "That'll be $34.50, sir," Marcus replied, holding out the boxes. Blackwood fumbled for his wallet, his hands shaking slightly. Marcus noticed that the man kept glancing over his shoulder into the house, as if expecting someone or something. Through the open door, Marcus could hear voices, at least 3 different men talking in hushed, urgent tones. "Keep the change," Blackwood said, handing Marcus 2 $20 bills. The tip was generous, but something about the man's demeanor made Marcus uneasy. Blackwood's eyes darted around nervously, and he kept one hand on the doorframe as if ready to slam it shut at any moment. "Thank you, sir." "Have a good evening," Marcus said, but Blackwood was already closing the door. As Marcus walked back to his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. In his 2 years of pizza delivery, he had developed a 6th sense about people and situations. Most customers were predictable, hungry, tired, or excited about their food. But Robert Blackwood had seemed genuinely frightened. Marcus was about to get into his car when he heard something that made him pause. From somewhere inside the house came a sound that didn't belong with a business meeting, the muffled cry of what sounded like a young person in distress. The sound was brief, lasting only a few seconds before being cut off abruptly. He stood by his car for a moment, listening carefully. The summer evening was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the gentle bubbling of the fountain. Marcus wondered if he had imagined the sound or if it had come from a television inside the house. Still feeling uneasy, Marcus decided to take a different route back to the main road. Instead of using the circular driveway, he drove around to the back of the property where a service road led to the rear of the house. As he slowly navigated the narrow road, he caught a glimpse of something through a basement window. The window was partially covered by bushes, but Marcus could see light coming from what appeared to be a finished basement. For just a moment he saw the silhouette of someone sitting in a chair, someone much smaller than the businessmen he had seen cars for in the driveway. Marcus parked his car on the side of the service road and turned off the engine. His heart was beating faster now, and he couldn't decide if he was being paranoid or if his instincts were trying to tell him something important. He had always been the type of person who noticed details others missed, a trait that had served him well in his previous job at a security company before he started delivering pizzas. Taking out his phone, Marcus pretended to check his delivery list while actually positioning himself to get a better view of the basement window. What he saw in those few moments would change everything. A young boy, probably around 10 years old, was tied to a chair. The child's mouth was covered with tape and his eyes were wide with fear. Marcus felt his blood run cold. This wasn't a business meeting. This was something much darker and more dangerous. His mind raced as he tried to process what he had just witnessed. Should he call the police immediately? Should he try to get closer to confirm what he had seen? Should he drive away and pretend he hadn't seen anything? One thing was certain. That generous tip and Robert Blackwood's nervous behavior now made perfect sense. The CEO wasn't hosting a business meeting. He was dealing with something that had put his family in terrible danger, and Marcus had just stumbled into the middle of it. Marcus quietly started his car and drove back toward the main road, his mind working quickly to figure out his next move. He had 11 more deliveries to make, but suddenly, none of that mattered. Somewhere in that basement was a child who needed help, and Marcus Thompson, pizza delivery driver, might be the only person who knew about it. The discovery Marcus drove to a quiet parking lot 3 blocks away from the Blackwood mansion, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. His mind was racing with questions and doubts. Had he really seen what he thought he saw? Was that child actually in danger? Or was his imagination playing tricks on him? He pulled out his phone and stared at it for several minutes, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. Calling 911 seemed like the obvious choice, but what if he was wrong? What if the boy in the basement was just playing some kind of game? Or what if Marcus had misinterpreted the situation entirely? The more he thought about it, though, the more certain he became. The fear in Robert Blackwood's eyes, the nervous way he had handled the pizza transaction, the muffled cry from inside the house, and most importantly, the image of that terrified child tied to a chair. Everything pointed to a kidnapping situation. Marcus decided to call his older brother Jake, who worked as a police officer in the next county. Jake had always been level-headed and could give him advice without making things official just yet. "Hey Marcus, what's up?" Jake answered on the second ring. "Jake, I need your advice on something serious. I think I might have witnessed a kidnapping." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Tell me everything, and don't leave out any details." Marcus explained the entire situation, from Robert Blackwood's nervous behavior to the bound child he had seen in the basement window. Jake listened without interrupting, asking only clarifying questions about the layout of the property and the number of people Marcus had observed. "This sounds real, Marcus," Jake said finally. The fact that Blackwood answered the door himself, instead of having household staff do it, his nervous behavior, the voices in the background, it all fits the pattern of a family dealing with kidnappers. "You need to call the local police immediately. But what if I'm wrong? What if I get this family in trouble for no reason? Better to be wrong and embarrassed than to be right and do nothing. If there really is a kidnapped child in that house, every minute counts." Marcus hung up and immediately dialed 911. The dispatcher was professional and calm, asking for his location, the address of the incident, and a detailed description of what he had witnessed. She assured him that officers would be dispatched immediately and asked him to stay on the line. "Sir, we need you to stay away from the property until our officers arrive," the dispatcher said. "Do not approach the house or attempt to make contact with anyone inside." Marcus agreed, but found himself driving back toward the Blackwood estate despite the warning. He couldn't just sit in a parking lot while a child might be suffering just a few blocks away. He parked on a side street with a clear view of the mansion's driveway, keeping his phone on speaker so he could maintain contact with the dispatcher. From his vantage point, Marcus could see that the expensive cars were still parked in the driveway. No one had come or gone since his pizza delivery 30 minutes earlier. The house looked peaceful and normal from the outside, which made the situation feel even more surreal. "Units are en route," the dispatcher informed him. "They should arrive within 5 minutes." As Marcus waited, he began to piece together what might be happening inside the house. The voices he had heard through the door were probably the kidnappers giving instructions to Robert Blackwood. The CEO was likely being forced to cooperate with their demands while his son was held hostage in the basement. Marcus had read about similar cases in the news. Wealthy business owners were sometimes targeted by organized criminals who would kidnap a family member and demand ransom money or business favors. The victims were often forced to act normally to avoid drawing attention, while negotiations took place behind the scenes. His phone buzzed with a text from his manager, Tony, asking about his delivery progress. Marcus realized he had been gone for almost an hour and still had 11 more orders waiting back at the restaurant. Under normal circumstances, he would be rushing to complete his deliveries and earn his tips for the night. But tonight was far from normal. The sound of sirens in the distance brought Marcus back to the present moment. 3 police cars were approaching from different directions, their emergency lights flashing, but sirens now silent to avoid alerting anyone inside the house. Marcus watched as the officers positioned their vehicles strategically around the property. A detective in an unmarked car pulled up next to Marcus and rolled down his window. "Are you the pizza delivery driver who called this in?" "Yes, sir. Marcus Thompson. I'm Detective Rodriguez. I need you to walk me through exactly what you saw and heard." Marcus repeated his story once again, this time with even more detail. Detective Rodriguez took notes and asked specific questions about the layout of the house, the basement window location, and the people he had observed. "You did the right thing calling this in," the detective said. "We're going to approach this very carefully. Hostage situations require special handling, especially when children are involved." Through his car window, Marcus watched as more law enforcement vehicles arrived. A SWAT team van parked discreetly around the corner, and officers in tactical gear began taking positions around the property. The situation was escalating quickly, and Marcus began to understand the gravity of what he had stumbled into. Detective Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. "We've made visual contact with the basement. Confirmed presence of a juvenile victim appears to be restrained, also confirming at least 3 adult males on the main floor." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The confirmation that his observations were correct brought no satisfaction, only worry for the safety of the child and everyone else involved. He wondered if his decision to call the police had made the situation more dangerous, or if it was the child's only hope for rescue. "We need to establish communication with the subjects inside," Detective Rodriguez spoke into his radio. "Has anyone attempted to contact the residents?" "Negative. We're setting up surveillance equipment to monitor communications and movement inside the house." Marcus realized that his simple pizza delivery had triggered a major law enforcement operation. Police officers were now risking their lives because of what he had witnessed through a basement window. The weight of responsibility felt enormous. His phone rang again. It was Tony from the pizza restaurant. "Marcus, where are you? I've got angry customers calling about their orders." "Tony, I can't explain right now, but I'm dealing with an emergency. I might not be able to finish my deliveries tonight." "What kind of emergency? Are you hurt?" Marcus looked at the police cars surrounding the Blackwood mansion and the SWAT officers taking positions behind trees and walls. "I'm okay, but I'm helping the police with something important. I'll call you later." As Marcus hung up, Detective Rodriguez returned to his car window. "We're going to need you to stay here for a while longer. Your information has been crucial in helping us understand this situation, and we might need you to provide additional details as things develop." Marcus nodded, understanding that his evening had completely changed course. Instead of delivering pizzas and earning tips, he was now a key witness in what appeared to be a serious criminal investigation. The ordinary Thursday that had started, with loading pizza boxes into his car, had become something he would never forget. As he watched the police prepare their rescue operation, Marcus couldn't help but think about the chain of events that had led to this moment. If he hadn't taken that particular route around the house, if he hadn't stopped to look through the basement window, if he hadn't trusted his instincts that something was wrong, that child might have remained hidden and helpless. Sometimes the most important moments in life come disguised as ordinary ones, and Marcus was beginning to understand that this night would define him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The standoff begins. The police operation was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed outside of movies. Within an hour, the quiet residential street had been transformed into a command center. Police vehicles lined the block, and officers in tactical gear moved with practiced precision around the Blackwood property. Detective Rodriguez had set up a mobile command post in a large van parked 2 houses down from the mansion. Through the open doors, Marcus could see multiple screens showing surveillance feeds from cameras that had been quietly positioned around the property. The technology was impressive and somewhat intimidating. "We've identified the subjects inside," Detective Rodriguez explained to Marcus as they watched the operation unfold. 3 men, all with criminal records related to kidnapping and extortion. The leader is Vincent Caruso, who was released from prison 8 months ago after serving time for a similar crime. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. These weren't desperate amateurs who had stumbled into crime. They were experienced criminals who knew exactly what they were doing. "What about the boy? Do you know who he is?" Tommy Blackwood, age 9. Robert Blackwood's only son. He was reported missing from his private school this afternoon, but the school thought he had gone home early with his father's permission. The kidnappers used forged documents to sign him out. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The kidnappers had planned this carefully, taking the child from school to avoid immediate detection and giving themselves hours to set up their operation before anyone realized Tommy was missing. "How do situations like this usually end?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Detective Rodriguez paused before responding. "Every situation is different. Our primary goal is always to get the hostage out safely. Sometimes that means negotiating for hours or even days. Sometimes it means tactical intervention. We won't make any moves until we're certain we can protect the child." A communications specialist approached with an update. "We've tapped into the house's landline. They've been making calls to offshore accounts, apparently trying to arrange money transfers. The ransom demand is $2 million. Marcus whistled softly. $2 million was an unimaginable amount of money to him, but for someone like Robert Blackwood it might be accessible. The kidnappers had clearly researched their target well. "Are they planning to let the boy go once they get the money?" Marcus asked. Detective Rodriguez's expression grew darker. "In cases like this, there's always a risk that the kidnappers will eliminate witnesses regardless of whether their demands are met. That's why we can't wait for the money transfer to be completed." The weight of the situation settled heavily on Marcus's shoulders. A 9-year-old boy's life hung in the balance, and the decisions made in the next few hours could determine whether he would see his family again. As the evening wore on, Marcus watched the negotiation team set up their equipment. A specialist trained in hostage communication would soon make contact with the kidnappers, beginning what could be a lengthy process of psychological manipulation and bargaining. "Why don't they just storm the house?" Marcus asked. "You have all these SWAT officers here." "Because we don't know the exact layout of the basement or how the child is secured," Detective Rodriguez explained. "If we move too quickly, the kidnappers might harm Tommy before we can reach him. We also need to consider that there might be booby traps or other security measures we haven't detected." Marcus's phone buzzed with another text from Tony at the pizza restaurant. Several customers had called to complain about their missing orders, and Tony was clearly frustrated. Marcus felt guilty about abandoning his job responsibilities, but there was no way he could explain the situation without potentially compromising the police operation. A new development caught everyone's attention. One of the surveillance cameras had detected movement near a side entrance of the house. A man in dark clothing was positioning what appeared to be additional security equipment. "They're fortifying their position," observed the SWAT team leader. "These guys are more sophisticated than we initially thought." Detective Rodriguez spoke into his radio. "All units maintain position. Do not engage until we have a clear tactical advantage." Marcus found himself thinking about Tommy Blackwood, a 9-year-old boy who had probably started the day expecting nothing more unusual than regular classes and homework. Instead, he was tied up in a basement, surrounded by dangerous criminals while his father was forced to cooperate with impossible demands. "Does Robert Blackwood know that you're here?" Marcus asked. "Not yet. We're monitoring all communications in and out of the house, but we haven't made contact. Sometimes it's better to let the situation develop naturally before revealing our presence." The surveillance equipment was picking up more audio from inside the house. The kidnappers were arguing among themselves about something, their voices becoming more agitated as time passed. This internal tension could work in favor of the rescue operation, but it also made the situation more unpredictable. "One of them wants to move the boy to a different location," reported the communications specialist. "The leader, Caruso, is insisting they stick to the original plan." Marcus realized that his observation of the child through the basement window had provided crucial intelligence. Without that information, the police might not have known about Tommy's exact location within the house, making any rescue attempt much more dangerous. A food service truck pulled up near the command post, and volunteers began distributing coffee and sandwiches to the officers. Marcus was offered food but found that his appetite had completely disappeared. The adrenaline and stress of the situation had left him feeling nauseated and restless. Detective Rodriguez received another update through his earpiece. "The negotiation team is ready to make first contact. We're going to call the house and attempt to establish dialogue with the kidnappers." This was the moment when the standoff would officially begin. Once the police revealed their presence, there would be no going back. The kidnappers would know. They were surrounded, and their response could determine whether the situation escalated or began moving toward a peaceful resolution. "What will they say?" Marcus asked. "They'll identify themselves as law enforcement and express concern for everyone's safety. The goal is to open communication channels and begin building trust, even with criminals." Marcus watched as the negotiator, a calm woman in her 40s, picked up a specially equipped phone that would allow the entire team to monitor the conversation. Her voice was steady and professional as she dialed the number for the Blackwood residence. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before someone answered. "Who is this?" The voice was male, aggressive, and suspicious. "This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Metropolitan Police Department. I'm calling because we're concerned about the safety of everyone in the house. We'd like to talk." There was a long pause, followed by muffled conversation in the background. When the man returned to the phone, his tone had changed. "How did you find us?" "That's not important right now. What matters is that we want to resolve this situation safely. No one needs to get hurt today." Marcus found himself holding his breath as the conversation continued. The next few minutes could determine the course of the entire evening, and ultimately, whether a 9-year-old boy would survive to see another day. The standoff had officially begun, and Marcus Thompson, pizza delivery driver turned crucial witness, could only watch and hope that his decision to call the police would save Tommy Blackwood's life. Detective Sarah Chen's voice remained calm and steady, despite the tension that filled the command post. Everyone could hear both sides of the conversation through the speakers, and Marcus found himself analyzing every word and pause for clues about what might happen next. "We know you have Robert Blackwood and his son," Detective Chen continued. "We want to make sure everyone stays safe. Can you tell me how everyone is doing in there?" Vincent Caruso, the apparent leader of the kidnappers, had taken control of the phone. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had been in similar situations before. "Everyone's fine as long as you people don't do anything stupid. We're not here to hurt anybody. We just want what we came for, then we'll be gone." "What is it that you want, Vincent?" The use of his first name seemed to catch Caruso off guard. There was another pause as he processed the fact that the police knew exactly who he was. "You've done your homework," he said finally. $2 million transferred to accounts we'll specify. Once that's done, we release the boy and disappear. Detective Chen exchanged glances with Detective Rodriguez before responding. "That's a lot of money, Vincent. These things take time to arrange. Can you help us understand what kind of timeline you're working with?" Marcus was fascinated by the psychological chess match unfolding before him. The detective was acknowledging the kidnappers' demands while subtly probing for information about their plans and state of mind. "We're not in a hurry," Caruso replied. "But we're also not going to sit here forever. Mr. Blackwood has until midnight to make the transfer." Detective Rodriguez checked his watch. It was currently 8:30 p.m., giving them less than 4 hours to resolve the situation. He scribbled a note and passed it to the negotiation team. "Ask about the boy's condition." "Vincent, we need to know that Tommy is okay," Detective Chen said. "Can you put him on the phone or maybe let us speak with his father?" "The kid's fine. He's watching cartoons downstairs." Marcus felt a surge of anger at the casual lie. He had seen Tommy tied to a chair with tape over his mouth, definitely not watching cartoons. But he understood that Detective Chen couldn't reveal the specific intelligence they had without compromising the operation. "I'd feel better if we could hear his voice." Detective Chen pressed gently. There was a longer pause this time, followed by heated discussion in the background. Marcus could make out at least 3 different voices arguing, though he couldn't understand the words. "Here's how this is going to work," Caruso said when he returned to the phone. "You're going to pull all your people back to at least 2 blocks away. We see anyone closer than that and negotiations are over. You understand? Vincent, we both want the same thing here, for everyone to go home safely tonight, but I can't make decisions about police positioning. That's above my level." This was another negotiation tactic Marcus was learning about. Detective Chen was maintaining her role as an intermediary, while buying time for the tactical team to assess their options. Meanwhile, the surveillance equipment was providing continuous updates on activities inside the house. The thermal imaging showed that Tommy was still in the basement, though his exact position had changed slightly. Robert Blackwood appeared to be on the main floor with 2 of the kidnappers, while the third man remained near the basement stairs. "Sir," one of the surveillance technicians reported to Detective Rodriguez, "we're picking up cell phone signals from inside the house. They're definitely in communication with outside parties." This complicated the situation significantly. The kidnappers might have backup plans or additional support that the police hadn't identified yet. Detective Chen continued her conversation with Caruso, gradually building a rapport while gathering intelligence. She learned that the kidnappers had been planning this operation for months, studying Robert Blackwood's business schedule and family routines. They knew about his charitable activities, his usual travel patterns, and even his preference for ordering pizza from Tony's Palace. "You picked the right target," Detective Chen acknowledged. "Robert Blackwood is definitely someone who can access that kind of money." "We did our research," Caruso agreed, seeming pleased by the recognition of their planning. Marcus realized that his pizza delivery had actually disrupted the kidnappers' timeline. They had probably intended to complete their operation without any outside interference, but his accidental observation had accelerated everything. As the conversation continued, Detective Chen began introducing the concept of partial compliance. Instead of demanding immediate withdrawal of all police presence, she suggested that some officers could be repositioned to demonstrate good faith while maintaining necessary security. "I need to talk to my supervisors about moving our people back," she said. "Can you give me 20 minutes to work on that?" 10 minutes, Caruso countered. 15, and I'll see what I can do about getting the money transfer process started." "Fine. 15 minutes, but if we see anyone getting closer to this house, we're done talking." The line went dead and the command post immediately buzzed with activity. Detective Rodriguez gathered his key personnel to discuss their options. "We're dealing with professionals," he said. "They know police procedure, and they're not going to make obvious mistakes, but they're also under pressure. The longer this goes on, the more likely they are to make errors." The tactical team leader spread building blueprints across a table. "We've identified 3 possible entry points that wouldn't be visible from their current positions, but we still don't have eyes on the exact setup in that basement." Marcus found himself studying the blueprints along with the officers. His brief glimpse through the basement window was still the most detailed intelligence they had about Tommy's location within that space. "The window I looked through is right here," Marcus said, pointing to the blueprint. The chair was positioned about 6 feet from the window, facing toward the center of the room. "That's helpful," the tactical leader acknowledged. "If we can position a sniper with visual contact through that window, We might be able to provide cover for an entry team. Detective Chen was preparing for the next phase of negotiation. Her goal was to gradually increase communication while encouraging the kidnappers to reveal more information about their plans. They mentioned offshore accounts, she noted. That suggests they have an escape plan that involves leaving the country quickly. They'll want to conclude this operation as soon as possible. The 15-minute break gave everyone time to analyze what they had learned. The kidnappers were experienced but also operating under significant stress. Robert Blackwood was cooperating with their demands, probably hoping to protect his son. Tommy was alive but in serious danger, especially if the negotiations failed. Marcus checked his phone and saw several missed calls from his brother Jake. He sent a quick text. "Still here. Can't talk now. We'll call later." As the 15 minutes expired, Detective Chen prepared to resume contact with the kidnappers. The next phase of negotiation would be crucial in determining whether this situation could be resolved peacefully or whether the tactical team would need to intervene. "Remember," Detective Rodriguez said to his team, "our primary objective is getting that boy out alive. Everything else is secondary." Detective Chen picked up the phone to continue what had become a high-stakes conversation with three dangerous men who held a child's life in their hands. Marcus watched and listened, knowing that his simple pizza delivery had set these events in motion, and hoping that his decision to call the police would ultimately save Tommy Blackwood's life. "We've pulled back some of our units as a show of good faith," Detective Chen reported, which was technically true. Several visible patrol cars had been repositioned further from the house, though the tactical team remained in concealed positions. "We can see that," Caruso acknowledged. "What about the money?" "Mr. Blackwood's bank is working on the transfer, but there are security protocols they have to follow for amounts over $1 million. It's not like transferring a few $100. Marcus could hear the frustration in Caruso's voice when he responded. "How long are we talking about?" "They're saying it could take until tomorrow morning to arrange something this large, especially with offshore accounts." This was a calculated gambit. Detective Chen was using the complexity of international banking to buy more time while increasing pressure on the kidnappers. The longer they remained in the house, the more likely they were to make mistakes. "That's not acceptable," Caruso said, his voice rising. "We gave you a deadline." "Vincent, I understand you're frustrated, but I'm telling you what the bank is telling us. Big money moves slowly." In the background of the call, Marcus could hear one of the other kidnappers arguing with Caruso. The voices were getting louder and more agitated. The stress of the situation was beginning to affect the group's cohesion. "Put Blackwood on the phone," Caruso demanded suddenly. This request caught the negotiation team by surprise. Robert Blackwood hadn't spoken during any of the previous calls, and involving him directly could complicate things significantly. "I can try to arrange that," Detective Chen said carefully, "but I need to know that everyone is still okay. Can you put Tommy on the phone first?" "The kid's fine. Stop asking about the kid." "Vincent, I have to ask. It's part of my job. Just let me hear his voice for 2 seconds. Then you can talk to Mr. Blackwood about the money." The line went quiet for nearly a minute. Marcus could imagine the heated discussion taking place inside the house as the kidnappers debated how to respond to this request. When the line came back to life, it was Robert Blackwood's voice, strained and exhausted. "This is Robert Blackwood. Please, just do what they want. Get them their money. Mr. Blackwood, we're working as fast as we can on the financial arrangements. Are you okay? Is your son okay?" "We're both fine, but please hurry." Detective Chen wanted to ask more questions, but Caruso had apparently taken the phone back. "You heard him. Get the money. Vincent, we're going to need more time. Can you work with us on the timeline?" "No more delays. Midnight deadline stands." The call ended abruptly, leaving the command post in tense silence. Detective Rodriguez checked his watch. 9:45 p.m. They had just over 2 hours remaining. "He's losing patience," Detective Chen observed. "The group dynamics are breaking down in there." The surveillance team had been monitoring increased activity inside the house during the phone call. The thermal imaging showed all three kidnappers, moving around more frequently, and there had been several heated conversations. "One of them wants to cut their losses and run," reported the surveillance specialist. "We're seeing behavior consistent with internal disagreement about next steps." This development was both encouraging and dangerous. If the kidnappers split up or panicked, it might create opportunities for rescue. But it could also lead to rash decisions that put Tommy in greater danger. Marcus had been quietly observing the operation for over 3 hours now, and he was beginning to understand the enormous complexity of hostage negotiation. Every word, every pause, every tactical decision carried potential consequences for a 9-year-old boy's life. His phone buzzed with a call from his brother Jake. "I can't really talk right now," Marcus whispered into the phone. "I just wanted to check on you. This is all over the local news. Are you safe?" Marcus looked around, at the police vehicles, SWAT officers, and high-tech surveillance equipment. "Yeah, I'm safe. It's just intense." "You did the right thing calling this in. That kid's life might depend on it." After hanging up, Marcus noticed increased activity around the command post. New personnel were arriving, including what appeared to be federal agents. The situation was attracting attention from higher levels of law enforcement. Detective Rodriguez approached Marcus with an update. "We're bringing in additional resources. This case has some complications we didn't initially know about." "What kind of complications?" "Vincent Caruso and his crew have connections to organized crime. This might not just be a simple kidnapping for ransom. There could be business motivations we haven't identified yet." This revelation added another layer of complexity to an already dangerous situation. If the kidnappers had backing from larger criminal organizations, they might be more willing to use violence to achieve their goals. The surveillance team suddenly reported urgent activity inside the house. Multiple subjects moving rapidly on the main floor. Someone's at the basement door. Everyone in the command post tensed. Any change in Tommy's location could complicate rescue efforts significantly. "Wait," the surveillance specialist continued. "False alarm. One of them just went down to check on the boy. Now he's coming back up." Detective Chen was preparing for another round of contact with the kidnappers when her phone rang unexpectedly. It was Caruso calling them. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. His voice sounded different, more agitated and urgent than before. "I'm here, Vincent. What's going on?" "My partners are getting nervous. They want to move the boy to a different location." This was exactly what the police had been hoping to avoid. If the kidnappers relocated Tommy, they would lose their intelligence advantage and have to start the rescue planning from scratch. "Vincent, moving him seems like it would complicate things for everyone. Why don't you just stay put and let us work on getting your money? Because my guys think you're stalling. They think you're planning to storm the place." Detective Chen chose her words very carefully. "We're not planning to storm anywhere, Vincent. We want this to end peacefully. But if you move the boy, it's going to make everyone more nervous, including us." Marcus could hear shouting in the background of the call. The kidnappers were clearly arguing among themselves, and their unity was breaking down rapidly. "I need more time to convince them," Caruso said. "Can you give me something to work with, some proof that you're really trying to get the money?" Detective Rodriguez quickly wrote a note and passed it to Detective Chen. "Bank confirmation number." "Vincent, I can give you a confirmation number from the bank showing that they've initiated the transfer process." "Will that help?" "Yeah, give it to me." Detective Chen read off a legitimate-sounding but fabricated confirmation number. "Tell your partners that's proof the bank is working on it." "Okay, I'll try to keep them calm. But I can't promise anything if this drags on much longer." The call ended and the command post erupted in urgent planning. If the kidnappers decided to move Tommy, the police would have only minutes to act before losing their opportunity. "Tactical team, prepare for immediate entry if they attempt to move the hostage," Detective Rodriguez ordered. "We cannot let them take that boy to a secondary location." Marcus watched as the SWAT officers checked their equipment and reviewed their entry plans. The professional calm that had characterized the operation for the past several hours was giving way to focused urgency. The thermal imaging showed continued agitation inside the house. All three kidnappers were moving around and their conversations appeared to be getting more heated. "Sir," the communications specialist reported, "we're intercepting cell phone calls from inside the house. They're trying to contact someone, but the calls aren't going through. Their backup support isn't responding," Detective Rodriguez realized. That's why they're panicking. This development suggested that the kidnappers' larger plan was falling apart. Without external support, they were trapped in the house with a hostage, surrounded by police, and running out of options. Detective Chen's phone rang again. This time it was Robert Blackwood calling. "Detective, this is Robert Blackwood. I'm using a phone in my home office. They don't know I'm calling you." Everyone in the command post immediately focused on this unexpected communication. "Mr. Blackwood, are you safe to talk?" "For a minute, listen, they're arguing about whether to kill Tommy and run. One of them wants to shoot both of us and escape through the back of the house." Marcus felt his blood run cold. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, and Tommy's life was in immediate danger. "How much time do we have?" Detective Chen asked. "I don't know. Maybe minutes. They're waiting for some kind of signal from someone who isn't responding to their calls." "Mr. Blackwood, is there any way you can get to your son?" "No, he's in the basement and there's always someone guarding the stairs." "Okay, stay calm and try not to let them know you called us. We're going to get you both out of there." The line went dead, and Detective Rodriguez immediately activated the tactical team. "This is it," he announced. "We're going in. All units. Execute rescue operation now." Marcus watched as months of training and preparation compressed into seconds of coordinated action. The SWAT team moved toward the house with practiced precision, while snipers took positions to provide cove. Detective Rodriguez stood beside Marcus, speaking quietly into his radio headset. "Alpha team, basement window. Bravo team, main entry. Charlie team, rear exit. Wait for my signal." The thermal imaging continued to track movement inside the house. The kidnappers were still arguing, unaware that their world was about to change dramatically. Tommy remained in the basement and Robert Blackwood was somewhere on the main floor. "Snipers report ready," came a voice through the radio. "Entry teams report ready. Basement visual confirmed. Target is approximately 6 feet from window. Seated. Appears restrained." Marcus realized that his observation through that basement window was now guiding a life-or-death rescue operation. The information he had provided about Tommy's location was being used to save the boy's life. "All teams execute on my mark," Detective Rodriguez said. 3, 2, 1, mark. Everything happened simultaneously. The front door exploded inward, as the breaching team used specialized equipment to force entry. Windows shattered as SWAT officers entered from multiple points. Flashbang grenades created disorienting noise and light, designed to confuse the kidnappers without harming the hostages. Through the surveillance equipment, Marcus could hear shouting, running footsteps, and the authoritative voices of police officers taking control of the situation. "Police, get down now." "Basement team, we have visual on the hostage. Moving to secure. Subject down in the main hallway, subject secured. Second subject attempting to flee through rear exit. Charlie team in pursuit." The radio chatter was intense but controlled. Each team was reporting their progress as they systematically secured different areas of the house. "Basement team to command, hostage is alive and responsive. Beginning extraction now." Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. Tommy was alive. The rescue operation was working. First subject in custody. Robert Blackwood is safe and uninjured. Third subject apprehended in backyard. All subjects now in custody. The entire operation had taken less than 3 minutes from start to finish. Years of training and planning had been compressed into moments of perfectly executed action. Detective Rodriguez turned to Marcus with a smile. "Your pizza delivery just saved a boy's life." Through the surveillance monitors, Marcus could see officers escorting Tommy out of the basement. The 9-year-old was walking on his own, supported by a SWAT officer who had removed the restraints and was speaking to him gently. Tommy appeared frightened but unharmed. Robert Blackwood emerged from the house moments later, immediately scanning the area for his son. When he saw Tommy, he ran toward him, and father and son embraced in the middle of the front lawn, surrounded by police officers and emergency personnel. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes as he watched the reunion. The terror that had begun with his routine pizza delivery was finally over, and the ending was everything he had hoped for. Paramedics quickly examined both Tommy and Robert, checking for injuries and signs of trauma. Both appeared to be physically unharmed, though they would undoubtedly need time to process what they had experienced. Detective Rodriguez received a final report through his radio. All 3 suspects in custody: Vincent Caruso, Michael Torres, and James Sullivan. House is secure. No injuries to hostages or officers. The command post began the process of transitioning from emergency response to criminal investigation. Evidence teams would spend hours processing the scene, documenting everything for the eventual prosecution of the kidnappers. "Marcus," Detective Rodriguez said, "we're going to need you to give a detailed statement about everything you observed tonight. Your testimony will be crucial in the trial." Marcus nodded, understanding that his involvement in this case was far from over. He would need to testify about what he had seen, his decision to call police, and the events that followed. As the immediate crisis ended, Marcus began to process what had happened. His ordinary Thursday evening delivering pizzas had become an extraordinary night that would change multiple lives forever. Tommy Blackwood was safe with his father. 3 dangerous criminals were in custody. A potential tragedy had been prevented. Detective Chen approached Marcus with Robert Blackwood, who wanted to meet the person who had saved his son's life. "Mr. Thompson," Robert Blackwood said, extending his hand, "I can never adequately thank you for what you did tonight. If you hadn't called the police when you did." He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood the implication. Tommy's survival had depended on Marcus's quick thinking and willingness to get involved. "I'm just glad he's okay," Marcus replied. "I have a nephew about Tommy's age. I couldn't imagine not doing something." Robert Blackwood's eyes were filled with gratitude and exhaustion. "If there's ever anything I can do for you, anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask." As the media began arriving on scene, Detective Rodriguez suggested that Marcus might want to leave before the news crews set up their cameras. Marcus agreed, having no desire to become the center of a media circus. "One more thing," Robert Blackwood said before Marcus left. "I'm going to make sure Tony's Pizza Palace gets a substantial donation for their employee training program. And Marcus, I'd like to help you start that auto repair shop you mentioned you're saving for." Marcus was stunned by the generosity. "Mr. Blackwood, that's not necessary." "It absolutely is necessary. You saved my son's life by being observant, responsible, and brave. Those qualities should be rewarded, not just appreciated." As Marcus drove home after giving his statement to police, he reflected on the incredible chain of events that had begun with a simple pizza delivery. His decision to trust his instincts and call for help had prevented a tragedy and reunited a family. The next morning, Marcus woke up to find his phone filled with messages from news reporters, friends who had seen the story on television, and family members who wanted to make sure he was okay. The local newspaper had already run a front-page story about the pizza hero who had saved a kidnapped child. Within a week, Marcus had received a check from Robert Blackwood that would allow him to open his auto repair shop immediately rather than saving for several more years. Tony's Pizza Palace had received a donation that would fund employee training and safety programs for the next decade. More importantly, Tommy Blackwood was recovering well from his ordeal, attending counseling sessions and gradually returning to his normal routine. The family had invited Marcus to a private dinner to celebrate Tommy's safe return, and Marcus had gained not just recognition for his heroism, but genuine friendship with the Blackwood family. Vincent Caruso and his associates were eventually sentenced to lengthy prison terms for kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy. The evidence collected during the rescue operation, combined with Marcus's eyewitness testimony, had made conviction inevitable. Marcus Thompson, who had started that Thursday evening as just another pizza delivery driver, hoping to earn enough tips to pay his bills, had become a local hero whose quick thinking and moral courage had saved a child's life. His story became an inspiration to others about the importance of trusting their instincts and taking action when they witness something wrong. The auto repair shop that Marcus opened 6 months later bore a small plaque near the entrance. Thompson's Auto Repair, where every detail matters. It served as a reminder that sometimes the smallest observations can have the biggest impact, and that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when they choose to get involved. Marcus never delivered another pizza, but he never forgot the lesson he learned that night. Heroes aren't born, they're ordinary people who make the right choice at the right moment, even when that choice requires courage they didn't know they possessed.